Hello, my beautiful friends, my fellow space blobs, earth blobs, sparkly blobs, or whatever poetic form you are describing your existence with at this time. I am here for all of it. And as you can probably hear, I am very congested because I am still a little bit sick with a cold. And it has been quite the eclipse season we just moved through as far as my health because I have had multiple setbacks with a stomach bug, this cold that I'm having now. I was having some visual migraines at the beginning of eclipse season, which I have not had for years at this point. So it's been a very interesting season as we've moved through Aries season, and sitting down here to think about Taurus season feels really, really good. I'm very much looking forward to having this comforting, cozy conversation with you all about Taurus season, about the beauty of it, about how we can work with it and utilize it in the wake of a lot of the big energetic work that we were doing during this Aries season. It's a really natural flowing next stage of the journey to move into this Taurus and Venusian energy and how that can support us and illuminate the path for us moving forward. I know I am needing that. And as I'm sitting here today, I debated even doing a video because I have been really learning through this eclipse season and through these times of just getting sick and needing to rest that I've been just pushing myself and forcing myself to get things done, even when I know that my energy is in a certain space. And I've been learning to kind of just reconsider how and when I'm creating and why I'm creating and just even the mindset that I bring into my creative sessions. And I realized that, I don't know, I actually kind of like creating from these slightly messy, strange places where I'm not feeling 100%. Maybe I'm not coming in with the clearest mindset of my entire life sitting down here, but there's something so real and valid about coming in, knowing that like that eclipse season was rough. I am not feeling my clearest at this point. I'm still integrating, I'm still learning, but I think that part of the journey of like sitting and having these philosophical conversations with you all is like, I don't have all the answers. And we're all of us on this journey, right? And we're having these conversations and we're exploring together, and somehow talking from this space that I'm in right now just feels like the truest, realest thing I could bring in. And so it feels actually really good. And today is going to just be all about the coziness. So get your tea, your journal, whatever you like to do as I sit in the background talking. We are going to just set ourselves up for this Taurus season. I'll do a little intuitive tarot reading at the end, and we'll just have a lovely chat about what Taurus is all about and some of the thoughts I've been having around how to work with this fixed earth sign and all the magic it brings. So stick around. Personally, I am really looking forward to moving through Taurus season and working with this energetic in the wake of this Aries season and this eclipse season, which has just been so powerful. I don't know, how is everybody else feeling at the end of it? I just told you about the fact that I was basically sick for a lot of it, and just kind of reviewing things and having to reconsider how I'm treating myself and how I'm doing my work. I'm curious about how everybody else has been feeling as we've been moving through these waves of energy, and if you were also feeling the intensity of it. But what I do love about moving into this next sign and this next season is that it's a really natural next placement to go. I think for me, the first thing I think about when moving into this fixed earth sign is that this allows us to integrate all of those really impactful energetics that we just moved through with all of that energy in Aries, all of the work we were doing with Chiron and the eclipses and the North Node and all of that, the questions that came up with that. Now in this fixed earth sign, we can allow that to settle into our bodies. We can allow that to kind of mellow into what we want to do with it next. The fixed earth sign for me is really, really important because I think a lot of times if we're just looking at Taurus on the most basic terms, it can kind of just be about like, a lot of times Taurus will be described as the sign that's very work ethic based, where it's like you just work, work, work and never stop. and maybe be really stubborn and stuck in your ways. But for me, really what the Taurus energetic is about is sustainability. It's about how we take care of our creative process, how we take care of our bodies in the long run. Not just over a quick season, a spurt of creativity, but how we sustain ourselves through full seasons of life. Fixed signs are really, really valuable for getting us back to our core and back to what really sustains us through life and what holds us on a much deeper level. And I think that Taurus is maybe one of the most useful energetics for working through that and allowing ourselves to be here in the world as we are. And Taurus is also associated with images like the Empress. And this is really interesting for me because Taurus is also during a time of year in the Northern Hemisphere when we're starting to have the return to the flowering world, where we have leaves coming out and flowers coming out. We're really starting to feel that strong spring energetic. And it's that return from the underworld. If we're thinking about imagery like Persephone or the May Queen in the Beltane tradition, there is this returning to the top side of the world and enjoying the fruits of all that deep labor that we were doing in the Midnight Garden, in the underworld, in the churning of the soil, in examining our woundings and our subconscious and our unconscious and our exiles and our inner rebels and all of the parts of ourselves that maybe have been overextended in life. For me, coming into this Taurus season is now about enjoying all of those gifts, all of those flowerings, and allowing them to express and maybe give us some new inspiration for what we're creating next and how we're going to move through this world in meaningful, loving ways that maybe will help heal this world even. And Taurus is also ruled by Venus. Venus will be joining us in Taurus a little bit into Taurus season, but that Venusian element as well in Taurus for me is so important because I think there's a very altruistic, powerful beauty to Taurus energy. But I also think with that Venusian influence, it's this idea that to feel good and to do things that bring you joy and that bring you a sense of openness are valuable. They aren't immoral or lazy or selfish, that there's something really beautiful and valuable about taking the time to let ourselves enjoy and feel really loved by the world around us and by the way we treat ourselves. This is a very deeply loving energetic that is really, really gentle and beautiful and very self-mothering. We're working here with Taurus and we'll have a full moon in Scorpio. We're working with that death birth axis here. And so this is really the stuff of life and renewal when we're working with Taurus. Taurus is often associated with this phrase, I have. So there's kind of this very basic tradition where each of the 12 signs has a little phrase. Aries is I am, Taurus is I have, Gemini is I think, but I've never really connected so much with this idea of I have. For me, that's very consumerist. It's very colonial too, this idea of owning things, like having things and that being the point of life. So I've always liked to think that Taurus is more of like, I create. Like, what am I creating? What am I playing with? What am I exploring? I think also like it liberates this idea of Taurus being kind of tied to this manifestation culture that we saw in the 2010s. Well, there was some really beautiful messaging and things that were coming up around the way we use our imaginations to create our lives, and there's something really valid there. I think there's a little bit of a dark side to manifestation culture, which is about the materialism and kind of the emptiness of that. And I think a lot of us have had some interesting inner dialogues around this idea of manifestation. And there's a complicated relationship going on there. But for me, I think reclaiming my dream space away from feeling like I need to use it just to think about material gain or feeling like secure all of the time, and more to allow it to be this creative process where I'm using it in interesting ways, unusual ways that maybe have nothing to do with kind of the standard way of thinking, creating, and exploring my daydreaming. So I also think that a really important element and theme for this Taurus season is reclaiming your dream space. And I mentioned this book I think, probably every other video, because I think Trisha Hersey's work is so important. But if you have not read Rest is Resistance, it is the perfect book for Taurus season or any season of your life. Her work is extremely important. Pick it up, read it. But she talks a lot about reclaiming dream space from this kind of production minded model of the world. And I think that's a really, really powerful way to work with Taurus energetics. It also makes me think of a quote that came up for me recently by Amanda Gorman, the poet, beautiful. And she said, "I think if I could go back in time and give myself a message, it would be to reiterate that my value as an artist doesn't come from how much I create. I think that mindset is yoked to capitalism. Being an artist is about how and why you touch people's lives. Even if that's one person, even that if that's yourself in the process of art making." I just love this idea of really nurturing our dream spaces, nurturing ourselves physically, allowing all of these big waves of energy to really integrate into our physical beings, and allowing that dream space to show us what that means for us next. So creating those soft spaces. I had one final theme that I think is really interesting for this Taurus season, and it kind of goes back to that fixed earth sign conversation that I was bringing up a few minutes ago, because it's about comfort zones. I've been thinking about this topic a lot because I realized, like, I'll be reading things or listening to things that talk about, you can only learn and grow by being in the comfort zone. And I'm always like, oh, I need to be pushing myself so much harder. And then I realized that for the last few years, I have been living outside of my comfort zone 24/7. I immigrated to a new country, and actually I was overextending myself to the point that I was no longer feeling creative, feeling fulfilled, feeling interested in things, because I was overextending beyond my comfort zones. And I think comfort zones are such a unique personal thing. For some people, a comfort zone could be quite expansive. So for them to leave it, they're going to have to do some pretty big things. For other people, that want a quieter, simpler life, small changes are going to be outside of the comfort zone. And none of those things are like right or wrong or better or worse. There's no judgment here. But I think like just understanding our individual comfort zones is really important, because Martha Beck, who's a really fun teacher, if you haven't checked out her work, talks about this idea of the learning zone, which is this sweet spot where you've just stepped outside of your comfort zone, but you're not so overextended that you're kind of stressing your system and basically collapsing it all down and somewhat sabotaging yourself by doing that. And I think that the Taurus energy is really about that. It's about finding your sweet spot and realizing that, to grow and to be a beautiful person and to see your dreams doesn't always mean overextending yourself. It doesn't always mean pushing yourself to the limits. It doesn't always mean trying to dream yourself into extreme scenarios where you're just pushing past all of your boundaries and doing all of that. That it can also be about really soft dreaming. It can also be about leaving your comfort zone in a way that feels rewarding and feels good and feels exciting and feels natural to you. And I think just honoring what that is for you, and maybe even, looking, I think there's a lot of us sensitive spirits out there who are constantly feeling like we need to keep up with this idea of leaving your comfort zone, doing something that scares you every day. And if we really looked around, we'd probably notice that we've actually been leaving our comfort zones constantly, and maybe to a point that's been a little bit getting in the way of taking care of ourselves. So this is also a really great season to just think about how you pushing yourself, and if maybe sometimes you're doing too much or you're trying to force yourself to change in ways that are unsustainable. This is all about taking care, sustainably creating in ways that feel really true and really good, so that we're not feeling like we're just constantly overextending and then getting stuck back in the same crash cycles over and over again. So that theme's been coming up with me quite strongly in recent weeks. I just wanted to explore a few energetic conversations that are coming up for this Taurus season as we explore and prepare and get ourselves connected with it. And the first thing that came to mind for me is that there's just going to be so much energy in Taurus during this season. We'll, of course, have the sun there as it moves in on the 19th, but we will also be beginning Taurus season having just come off of a Jupiter-Uranus meetup in Taurus that is really, really powerful as far as kind of exploring how we're envisioning, how we're changing, and what we really want to create through being here physically in the world. So we're going to have Sun, Jupiter, Uranus. Venus is going to move into Taurus shortly after on April 29th. So we're going to have a lot of energy here, including a new moon in Taurus as well in May. So we're really, really working with this Venusian-based energy, and it is going to be quite pronounced. And that means that this is a time where it's not about forcing ourselves to make it happen. It really is going to be a bit of a practice in our receptivity, and that takes some courage. I think sometimes when we think about this idea of receptivity, openness, allowance, we think of this as kind of this passive, even lazy thing, or like it doesn't have a form to it. But for me, this is the most vulnerable thing we can do. All of us have been taught most of our lives that it's all about pursuing our goals, which is part of it. It's part of it to explore and to take action and to experience all of that. But to be vulnerable enough to make spaces of trust in our mundane day-to-day is huge. And it is a practice, and it's one that we can expand our tolerance for slowly and gently. Once again, leaving our comfort zones, it can also be leaving a comfort zone to integrate more trusting, open receptivity into our lives. So this is just a really beautiful season to practice moments of receptivity where it feels natural and good to you. And yes, maybe a little vulnerable, maybe a little uncomfortable, but just trying it out and playing. So that's the first thing that I would say about this Taurus season. The moons for this Taurus season are really going to be so helpful and medicinal. We have that full moon in Scorpio that comes right as we enter Taurus season on the 23rd of April. And that's going to really close out our eclipse season energetics fully. That full moon is going to illuminate what we've just moved through. Some of our old patterning, some of our old fears, some of our old shadows, those really deep midnight garden energetics where we're digging into the bones of life and really looking at ourselves. We're going to be using that medicine to really see and illuminate our path forward. And then the new moon in Taurus is going to be so much about regeneration, new creation, visioning. Those moons are just, I'm really looking forward to working with that axis as we move through this Taurus season, and we will be having conversations about both of those moons. We also have Mercury is going to be retrograde until April 25th. So the first few days of Taurus, we are going to still be working with that Mercury retrograde energy, but then it goes direct in Aries. And so Taurus season is also going to be Mercury post-shadow phase, which means we're integrating all of that energy we worked with eclipse season, with Mercury retrograde during this really, really powerful, vulnerable Aries season. So once again, Taurus season is going to be all about integration, allowing things to settle into the body, allowing ourselves to kind of calibrate to what wants to be expressed next in this physical version of the world. And the final thing I wanted to mention is Pluto retrograde. So Pluto moved into Aquarius at the beginning of this year, and we've been working with that energy. This retrograde will eventually in September bring Pluto back to Capricorn, just for a couple of months. But this is going to be a really beautiful time here as we begin that Pluto retrograde on May 2nd, just to think about what this year has already brought you as far as new energetics, new ways of seeing, new lenses that have been coming in, new ways of understanding yourself and your journey. You know, what has become known to you in this time? I think that is going to be a really beautiful moment, just as that little retrograde begins with Pluto, to just have a little reflection on what Pluto in Aquarius has meant for you so far and how it has felt for you, and just to allow yourself a moment of beauty and grace on that front. So there's some really, really poetic transits. And in general, I think that this Taurus season really is about creating some harmonious conversations. I know there's a lot of heaviness going on in the world, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of heaviness going on, not only on the collective level, but individually too. A lot of people I'm talking to, it's like this really, it's been an interesting year so far as kind of thinking about the heaviness of being alive in this world and also longing for beauty and poetry and light to coexist within that. And I think that this Taurus season is really going to be conversations around those things, that we need the poetry and the beauty and the art and the creativity. We need it. We need it more deeply than ever as we watch some really big, horrible things unfold in the world, and that it's important. It's important to allow those gifts to be a part of the process. And I think a lot of us are going to be feeling that and acknowledging that in our process. I'm just going to pull a couple of cards here to close out our conversation because I'm going to have to lay down right after this moment with you all, as you can hear in my voice. The moon came out. I love that. This is a really important energy. Let's see what wants to move with that moon energetic. The moon is so much about communing with our true longings, and the Page of Pentacles. I love that. I love that because for me, when I see these two together, what I see is a communion between the hidden and the unseen and the physical creative. And Page of Pentacles is so much about new beginnings. This is an energy that is just so eager to try and find out what happens and to offer ideas, offer trying things out, prototyping things, just seeing what happens. There's a really open, youthful playfulness to the Page of Pentacles. And that is kind of spurting out of the depth of this moon energy. The moon is where we go to really meet our wild self. When you see here, we have a wolf and a dog. In this moonlit landscape, we also have lobster figure here, and these are all, it's like a trail, it's a mystery going back to our really deep wild selves, the self that hasn't been groomed by culture, by society, by expectations, by the expectations we have of ourselves. And when we engage with that wild self, it often comes with quite strange ideas, things that don't necessarily fit the mold, that may be a little bit bizarre to culture. And it's really interesting thinking about translating that through this Page of Pentacles. Is just going to try some things out, just going to see if we can translate and try some things out. So I think that really covers it. Like, this is a really beautiful time to let your imagination take you to some interesting places, allow your poetic, creative, sensitive self to take you to some interesting places, and then just try out a few things. Try out a few moments of receptivity. Try out a few moments of maybe sharing your art or having a conversation with a few people or trying something different out. This is a really great time to play around with your foundation and what's really working for you, what's really holding you, what's really sustaining you. Once again, that fixed Earth energetic is about the long game. How are we taking care of ourselves in the long game? And how are we really supporting our inner creator, our inner carer, our inner compassionate, nurturing, loving, expressive self? How are we allowing ourselves to be here fully? There's so much goodness to Taurus energetics. Let me know how you connect with Taurus, what it has meant to you through the years, how you're feeling as we come to the close of Aries season, the close of eclipse season, as we enter into this beautiful Taurus season. And if you have not joined me yet for Journey Through the Major Arcana over on Patreon, I would love to see you there. We are just hitting that midway point through the journey, but you can join at any point and catch up on all of the episodes so far. I am really taking us through a soft, juicy journey through all of these archetypes, and how do we activate them in our lives? How do we create some more magic, and how do we deepen our tarot practices? So I would love to see you there for that. If you have not joined me on Patreon, we also have our weekly chats every week. If you want to join my Magic Makers Circle, we have live Zoom gatherings twice a month. So I'd love to see you in that space. I'd also love to see you here. Every time you leave a comment or let me know how you are doing, it is so beautiful to watch those conversations and to feel through them. I love this community so much, and just showing up the way that I'm feeling today, it feels really good to be here. So I'm sending you all so much love. I will be back very shortly because we need to dive into that Scorpio full moon. I am so excited. I love the Scorpio full moon every year, and this one just feels really positive and powerful to me in a really special way. So I'm really looking forward to discussing that with you very soon here. And I will see you all so soon. And welcome to Taurus season.